Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Josephine, and I will be here with you for the next half an hour. And I'm currently in Sweden, and I'm sitting here in my home office looking out on some gray clouds. And today, as you will see in my presentation, we will talk about developing a strategy involving the entire organization. And I will talk about this from my perspective and what we have been doing in Wikimedia Sverige in Sweden. And I hope you will find this interesting. And I will also try to answer any questions that I see that you have. So I think we'll just dive right in. And again, this is me. I work as a project leader, mainly focusing on education and learning at Wikimedia Sverige in Sweden. And I've been working here for a year and a half. So this is my first Wikimania, which is very exciting. And I've been listening into some sessions earlier today. And it has been mainly me and my colleague Eric that has been working with this organizational strategy for the last year. And I will be presenting our work here today. So, a strategy for the organization, what we did and how we did it. That is what we will focus on today. I will briefly start by talking about the process and what affected us concerning that. And then I will talk about the content, what the end product is and why it looks like that. So why did we start talking about having a new strategy for the organization? Well, actually, there was a strategy existing already for the period of 2016 and 2 to 4 years from that. And as the 4 years had passed in 2020, we realized that the organization was in a new state and we had to find our next strategic pathway for the upcoming years. So rather than just renewing the old one, we wanted to do a more extensive work. And that is what we started doing in 2020. And what affected this process? Well, things had happened in our surroundings since 2016. One of them being the Wikimedia Foundation movement strategy recommendations, which we could not think about in our own strategic work, because we saw that the decisions being made in that process and the findings from that process had to be adopted by us as a chapter. So that was something we had to consider and also think about when writing our own strategy. Of course, we also had the UN Sustainable Development Goals that had been developed over the years leading up to this. And we see ourselves as a part of this larger context. And that's why we also wanted to find relevant things to focus on coming from the SDGs. So that affected us as well. We already during the previous strategic period had started changing the scope of the organization, one can say. We heard these thoughts about the possibility of starting or forming hubs around the globe, geographical or thematical. And in Sweden, we're interested in working with a strategic thematic hub concerning content partnerships, etc. And in order to do that, we had to prepare our own organization for all of those possible changes that might come if we travel that path further. So that was also an aspect that we had to think about when forming our strategy. So all of these three things affected the organization, and that's something that we took with us in forming this new strategy. So, how did we do it? Well, we started at the board level, of course, and the board gave the organization directions for the areas in which we would work. Because the old strategy was basically very brief. It had 4 areas, and it had about 7 goals that we would achieve within that period. But that was it. It had no further explanations, and it didn't really have a context, and it was a bit isolated. So something we wanted to do now was to take that and build on that, but make it more extensive and more relatable, and something that even someone new coming into the movement would understand. So the board gave the directions of us continuing within these 4 fields of work that we will look into a bit later on, or the 4 themes. And then they gave us as staff the possibility of developing the process and engaging the organization in this work. And me and my colleague Eric and our manager and other people at the office were thinking about, well, how can we involve the members in the best possible way? And we realized that we wanted to form working groups that could develop the strategy. So we sent out in our newsletter and on our wiki, we posted that anyone interested in joining our strategic work could do so and send in their applications. So we had a brief form where people could state why they wanted to join and what they could contribute with to the process, and also which of these 4 areas they would like to work with. And we had just over 20 people signing up for to be in these working groups. So they consisted of volunteers. They also had 1 or 2 people from our national board in them. And they also had a staff member that could support the group and also taking notes and being able to answer questions related to the office or the work that we do there. So these 4 working groups set out last fall to think about what their area respectively contained and what they wanted to achieve within that area for the entire organization. So they worked for a couple of months, having 3 to 5 meetings in each group, and also documenting all their discussions. After that, me and my colleague just put this into one large document, basically, and sent it to the board, where the board as a whole then had discussions about what the groups had published or presented. So the board took a look at all of this, and they made some strategic decisions concerning this. Like, do we think this is covering the area? Do we need something to be more specified? There was also a work of maybe of moving some parts from one area to another that suited that part better. And they also had made the decision to cut some things that would not be the focus of this strategic period, because we as an organization can't do everything. After that, the document was sent out on a referral round. both to members that had shown interest in advance of being a part of this process, but not work in the actual working groups, but also to any member that wanted to have their say. And when doing this, we got very helpful insights from the community, both text-wise, like correcting grammar and asking for clarifications, and also making it coherent through the document. But also, of course, thoughts and ideas about, well, what does this really mean? And yeah, this should be highlighted, or I don't really get what this means, etc. So we took all of those thoughts and ideas and developed the document further. And then we then we sent out the proposal for our annual meeting. And that is where every member has one vote and can vote to adopt this document. And there were some discussions as well on if this was the correct strategic pathway. But it was finally adopted by the annual meeting. So that was like the steps where the organization was involved. So they had members had several possibilities. But that wasn't the only thing we did, because we also had an external analysis where individuals and organizations in our surrounding were sent a form. So we asked them, what do you think is the role of Wikimedia Sverige today and in the future? What topics do you think we should focus on, etc.? And that was sent to the working groups as well, and to me and my colleague who presented this to the board as well. So we got some thoughts and ideas from that. So yeah, as I've written here as well, it started with the board given directions. Then we involved the members. We involved an external analysis with individuals and organizations in our near surroundings. And then the board was making strategic decisions again in between. And we as staff were supporting in collecting data, compiling texts, holding a few workshops, and also preparing the document. This was pretty much the process of creating the strategy. So after this, I'm sure you're curious on what it contains. And this is the structure of the document. As I said, it was very brief before, and now we wanted to expand it. So it starts with the purpose of the organization, which comes from other steering documents that we have, but we wanted to include that in strategy as well. We also brought in the vision of the organization, and that is also something that already exists. Then we decided to have a section on who we are as an organization, stating the role of Wikimedia Sverige in our context and who we want to be and what we do, basically, what we work with, who we are in essence. We also wanted to include our mission, which is what we want to achieve in the world. And of course, here we're talking about spreading free knowledge, making it come of use, and also defining these 4 areas that I was talking about earlier, which can be seen as our mission, pretty much. We also gave a background for the strategy, just stating that this is what we will be working with the upcoming years, because we're in a situation where where we think this is necessary. Then we define the strategic areas, and here they come. They are access, use, community, and enabling. And I will show you what that means further on. And within each and every one of these 4 areas, we have goals that we want, or something we want to achieve. And then we have bullet points explaining how we can achieve them, what actions we must take in order to achieve these goals. So, of course, this is on our wiki, and I will make sure there is a link to that as well, even though it's not translated, it's in Swedish, but where you can take a look and see for yourself how it looks. So this is the overall structure. And here are the strategic areas. The first one is access, and that this is a translation of what the document says about access. And here we mean that we will work for societal change in Sweden and globally, where increased access to free knowledge becomes the norm and practically possible, and where qualitative materials benefit the Wikimedia platforms. So this is access to material, basically. Giving access, providing access, and the role we take in that. So we also want to see some change here, talking about free knowledge as a norm, rather than shutting things into closed systems, proprietary. So we want to, we want to be a part of a bigger movement, giving people access to free knowledge. The next area is use, and that is about using the material that is on our platforms and using the platforms themselves, saying that Wikimedia Sweden shall contribute to people feeling safe on the Wikimedia platforms, motivated to share knowledge and to contribute themselves. So making it easier to share and lowering the thresholds for sharing different kinds of knowledge. The next part is community. And here it is defined that we will support existing communities and help create new communities. And communities being a wide word here, but it mainly focuses on the online communities, but we see them as several different communities. It's not only one Wikimedia community. Of course there is, but it can also be divided into smaller separate ones. For example, the Wikidata community, or the Wikivoyage community, or of course the Wikipedia community, etc. So platforms, but also groups that work to support the digital platforms. We have, for example, a local group that has editathons, and then we can support that kind of community. So both the online community and offline, but working towards our platforms. And the fourth area is enabling, and that is enabling our work, basically. So we must be financially and operationally sustainable, and the material that we produce, the work that we do, must be reusable and being able to be further built on by the larger free knowledge movement. So these are the areas as they are defined in the document. I thought we'd take a look on these and talk about the different goals that are in each and every area. So within, or the statements, one can say, they're not measurable goals per se, but statements that we make. And within the area of access, we state that the organization shall work to ensure that information that is of broad interest is made open and easily accessible, linked together, and refined. So this is one of the essences, of course, of the movement as a whole, but we wanted to make sure that that we work in order to achieve this. And as I said, underneath these areas, there are bullet points stating what we can do to achieve this. And here, for example, we state that that we want to have more linked data on our platforms, or making it possible to do large uploads of big data sets, or making information readable by machines, so it can be linked and used by others, for example, through Wikidata. So those are some points in achieving this access. And then the next statement is that the association shall work for a societal change where increased access to free knowledge is practically facilitated and thereby becomes the norm. And this we think that we can achieve by having other organizations working strategically to spread knowledge and making it free, and also talking about free licenses, and that information has free licenses, and also cooperate with others in making data available and also of high quality. Oh, here they come in a different order, I see. But now we have community. Sorry about that. And here, as I said, we shall support existing communities and we will create new communities. And supporting the existing ones is that we also must develop and also maintain the internal knowledge that we have in our association and in the online communities, so that we don't forget how to do things. We also should take initiative to networks and meetings within communities and between communities in different physical locations or thematic areas. So we should help setting up the first meetings for a community, for example. And we should also support communities in, for example, traveling or financial support, or us as a staff and our competence. And when it comes to helping create new communities, we shall actively reach out to more communities than we do today. We should support communities that work with our official minority languages in Sweden, which we don't do very much today, but we have 5 official minority languages, and support them. We should also train volunteers to hold their own events, for example, and thereby engaging more people and creating new communities. So those are some bullet points for the community aspect. When it comes to use, we shall provide volunteers and users with tools and opportunities to contribute to and ensure qualitative information. We will contribute to improving user experience on our platforms, doing what we can there, and work to ensure that all volunteers have equal opportunities to contribute to the Wikimedia Movement's platforms. And we see this as as a part of using the platforms, lowering the thresholds for that. So when we talk about providing tools and opportunities, we think that we must raise competence, for example, when it comes to source criticism, and that we must develop tools or methods for volunteers to make it easier to cite and to control the quality of information, and that what's shown in our platforms is shown in a correct way, and that we as an association can support that work of volunteers. We also want to improve the user experience, looking at technical possibilities or solutions and doing what we can to support that development, and identify areas where we find it extra important that the software is developed, and try to feedback Wikimedia Foundation on that, for example, and also that we know which tools we have and that they are updated and well documented how to use them. And making it possible for all volunteers to have equal rights. We think this is very important, of course. And there we must work with the integration of new volunteers to make new people feeling safe on our platforms and know how to use them. And also identify underrepresented areas of knowledge or parts of the society that we think can contribute a lot to our communities and support their enabling of publishing things or sharing their information through our platforms. And that we should focus on groups that work with immaterial cultural heritage, for example, and native people's knowledge and cultural heritage. So we think that is important. And then we have the enabling, where we talk about the organizational aspects of this, that our association must be operationally sustainable, meaning that we need to grow as an association, and that we must have many volunteers, including them in the work, and supporting them with what we can, and that we should not be relying on individuals, but we must share the knowledge in between us. We also talk about financially sustainable, and there one aspect is gaining funds from several different parties, so we're not relying on one sole economic contributor, and also finding strategic partnerships for innovation, for example. We also want to collaborate with new partners and actors, finding people that we have not been working with previously, and that the association's work shall be based on and contribute to learning and external monitoring. So these are pretty much the 4 areas of our strategy. And now what? Well, hopefully, or we'll make this into annual plans, measurable goals and activities, and pretty much making sure this will happen. And with that, I am thrilled to have been presenting this to you. And I would very much like to say thank you to you who have been listening. And if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to contact me. I wrote my email in the presentation, and we can write that on the Etherpad as well. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed what I've been saying. Thanks.